share the screen. Tell me when you can see it.
We can see it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, just show also the comments. Discussion, here we are. Okay. So again, we are, let's first be grateful to the good spirits, to our spiritual mentors, spiritual guides, protecting spirits who are helping us in our day-to-day efforts to work a little bit on our personal improvement, particularly moral improvement, to get rid of the old man and to become slowly but surely a new person with better qualities, better knowledge, better disposition, understanding better fraternity, love, and charity. Okay, so we are in the second part of the book, of the Spiritist Manifestations, chapter 6, visual manifestations. So we have seen apparitions. We have also seen the different theories, these type of things which are running into the eyes sometimes and which are not by far not always related to seeing spirits. And we are now on the theory of hallucination. Okay, so hallucination is, as we have seen last week in the Kardec's explanation, a kind of, how can I say that, a drawer that some scientists put inside all what they cannot explain. They just put a word on it, a sticker here, hallucination, and that's it. But with this, they did not explain a lot of things. But of course, there can be some idée fixe, as we have seen in the last paragraph, some other causes which are indeed coming from ourselves, from our own spirits, which makes sometimes us think that we can see spirits even when it is not the case. Okay. Okay. So one can see that we have, as usual, like with Guilherme, please interrupt, ask your questions, don't hesitate, participate. One can see that we have explained this anomaly with a well-known physiological law, that of cerebral impressions. So this idée fixe, these images that can come from our own spirit, and that gives us a kind of an illusion to see spirits, which is not the case. Cerebral impression, but it is also always necessary to take the soul's intervention into considerations. If the materialists have not yet been able to give a satisfactory solution for the phenomenon, it is because they have not wanted to believe in the soul. So this is really, how to say, a fundamental sentence. As long as science follows the materialist paradigm, they will lack concepts enabling to explain all the phenomena of the nature which are linked to the spirit. So our scientists today, really, they have to remove the blinds they have around the eyes and to have a larger vision encompassing not only the material things, the tangible world, but encompassing also the spiritual world. Okay. They have not wanted to believe in the soul. I would say here Kardec is maybe a little bit strong, because we don't even ask them to believe in the soul. We just ask them, please take the soul, the existence of the soul independently of the physical body, at least as an hypothesis, a possible hypothesis for your reflections. That would be even the first part before believing, because the more they will investigate and think about this hypothesis, the more naturally they will get convinced and will believe in the soul. Thus, they will say that our explanation is erroneous because it is supported by a contested principle. So they contest the hypothesis, so they contest all the reasoning and even the conclusion we reach to, okay? Because they block with the hypothesis. And I don't know if some of you have already read the book, The Science of Life After Death, which has been written in English by Alexander Moreira Almeida and Humberto Schubert Coelho. And they explain very clearly that the fact to refuse to consider an hypothesis is an anti-scientific attitude. So they really hit strongly on this, how to say, conceptual blocking that the scientists have today with regards to the spiritual world. Okay, contested
Charles,
by them. Yes.
Sorry, it's Christine. Sorry. Just from previous discussions we've had, one thing that's come out is that we shouldn't try and push on other people, if you like, or really thrust on other people that the soul or the spirit leaves the body and there's spirit all around us, because people don't believe, but they know, they will know when their time comes. And as I said to someone yesterday, when someone dies, whether it's a Catholic, a Protestant, an Anglican, doesn't matter what religion they are, the body is the body, and there's something else that made up the body, and that something is what we call the soul or the spirit. And they started to accept that, yes, there's something else to it, because the body is burnt or put in the ground. Yet people are able to see apparitions or visions of that person that's passed away.
You are exactly right, Christine. And this is what we have seen earlier when we have looked to the first part of the medium's book, section 3, which is called Method. Okay, and there Kardec is explaining exactly what you are saying. First, before talking about reincarnation or even mediumnity and so on, we should convince the person which is in front of us that this person has a soul, that this person has something else than just the physical body, exactly as you said. And once this person, according to the properties, to the perceptions, to the mediumistic phenomenon that they cannot explain as such yet, because this extrasensorial perception, out-of-body experiences, and so on, they will end up getting convinced, yes, there is in the human being something else than just the physical body. And starting from this hypothesis, all the rest, yes, okay, if you have a soul, but where does it come from? Where does it go to? All these complementary questions will naturally follow. But the first thing, which is exactly what Kardec is saying here, which is blocking, is that they do not believe in the soul. They reject, even they refuse to consider the soul even as an hypothesis for the scientific researchers and reasoning. And that is the biggest hurdle still to be overcome. Yeah. So they simply contest. No, it's not true. It's not right. It does not exist. This is not science. They come with all these type of excuses, which somehow hiddenly you could say, I don't believe in it, so it does not exist. You know, and this type of reasoning is all but scientific. Okay. However, it has been accepted by the great majority since humankind has existed on the earth. The denial by a few ones does not compromise a law. Okay, and he's exactly right. The soul exists since the human being exists since a long time. A lot of people were convinced about this, and we have still a few, as he's saying, but it's how to say, quite significant few still today, particularly in the how to say, the best scientists. It is in this. Because I don't know if you have seen there are some European surveys which are done regularly. And in this survey, amongst others, one of the questions is, do you believe that we have a soul which is independent of the physical body? And there, depending on the country, even in France or Germany or even UK, more than 50% answer yes. When they ask, do you believe that life continues after death? More than 50% answer yes. So what we can see today is the people who are believing in the soul are already the majority, more than half. Okay, and that this portion, which is not believing in the soul, is reducing day by day. So it's a question, as Kardec says, the law is the law, and a few of them are still how to say, contesting it, but with the time it will pass. Okay. And they use also hallucination as this drawer to hide inside all the things that they don't want to discuss a lot about it. But sooner or later, they will have to reopen this drawer and to think a little bit better. Has our explanation been satisfactory? This questions Kardec. We have provided it for what it is worth in the absence of some other, and if you wish, we might call it a simple hypothesis while awaiting something better. So this is, you see, when you see this type of statement of Kardec, it's amazing, because when you study epistemology, which is somehow the science of the science, how is science made? When you see, for instance, epistemologists like Karl Popper, at the beginning of the 20th century, this means more than half a century after Kardec wrote this, he's clearly stating a scientific theory is true only up to the moment somebody demonstrates it is false. So there is a principle of falsifiability, which is stopping with this concept that all what is scientific is cast in concrete and will never change. So it is exactly what Kardec is expressing here. Okay, I give an hypothesis of explanation, but if you come with a better one, I will immediately change and accept the better explanation. And this shall be a basic principles of the epistemology of the scientific method. Okay. And there are some scientists, some epistemologists, which are spiritists, like Silvio Shibeni from the University of Campinas in Brazil. And he made a full study about this type of sentences that you can see in several different parts of Kardec's work, and comparing it with all these modern epistemologist theories. And he comes to the conclusion that Kardec has largely anticipated a lot of things that get conceptualized only half a century or even 1 century later. Okay. As it is, can it explain all the cases involving vision? Because this is also a question. You have a theory, it must be capable to explain everything. If there are some phenomena that we can observe that are not explained by the theory that we are putting, is either the theory is incomplete or we need another theory that is larger and encompasses also that phenomenon that it does not encompass today. Certainly not. But we challenge all physiologists to present one that, according to their exclusivist opinions, can explain all of them. However, when they proffer their sacramental words of overexcitation and heightened imagination for hallucinations, they actually pronounce nothing at all. So if all the theories about hallucination are insufficient for explaining all the facts, it is because there is something more involved than hallucinations per se. Our theory would be incorrect if we applied it to all cases involving visions. However, because some would contradict it, it is correct insofar as it is applied only to certain effects. Okay, so he gave a theory which is explaining what they call hallucination, but Kardec is also complementing, of course, in the first part of the chapter, in this theoretical essay about apparitions, involving, of course, the property of the perispirit, of the spirits, of our one, this affinity between both, enabling one medium which has the capability to see the spirits, to, in a certain moment, see the spirit who wants to appear with him, as we have seen in our studies in the past weeks. Okay, so this is clearly a theory which is complementing the one about hallucination, which does not explain all the facts. Liz?
I just would like to say something about this last phrase that you read, Charles, which is very much like all Kardec's work. He always been very careful in putting all these ideas together and understanding that the future will prove more, the future may show that some things that he wrote may be wrong, maybe not, but he's very careful. And just to highlight that, yes, he said here, you can't explain all cases. One rule won't fit all. We are all human beings and we are so complex, and there is so many things that happen that we are just scratching the surface sometimes, isn't it?
Exactly. Yes, he had this humility to state that the work he did was not the last word. He clearly expressed the progressive character of the Spiritist teachings, okay, or Spiritist body of knowledge. And indeed, some phenomena that developed very soon after Kardec in the 70s, for instance, like William Crookes, materializations, and then photographies that was also very little developed at Kardec's time, and then about radioactivity, X-rays, and all these things done by William Crookes and others. Of course, all this came to complement somehow the theory he presented. And he was also, careful enough not to state things which, are not solidly proven. And this made that up to today, nobody, as per my knowledge at least, could demonstrate that one of the basic principles of Spiritist body of knowledge is not true or is false. What does Spiritists say? There are spirits independently of the body. Nobody proved that it is not true. The spirits can communicate to the humans through mediumship. Nobody proved it was not true. The spirits are reincarnating. Nobody proved it is not true. At the opposite, you had, for instance, William Stevenson, which made studies suggesting very strongly, yes, this is true. So most of the study who came were confirming all these basic hypotheses that the spirits brought and that Kardec put in the books. So the model he brought was, simple enough and strong enough that after 160 years, nobody has been proven as being false in there. Maybe you can argue there are some problems of form. For instance, you can find in the Spirit's book or in the Gospel according to Spiritism several times the expression God punishes or God is castiga, I don't know the word in English, or God forgives. And this type of expression literally are false, because God does not punish, God does not forgive. Why should God forgive? To forgive, you need to be offended, and God is perfect, so he's never offended. So why should he, to say God forgives does not mean anything, because the forgiveness by God is implicit. So this problem of form we can admit today. And by the way, when you look writers like Léon Denis, for instance, he removed all this problem of form, but kept 100% in line with the basics of the teachings that Kardec brought. Okay, because these basics of the teaching up to now are still here fully valid, and this is something which is quite remarkable, because when you take the Newton law, for instance, you see, it was also solidly established. But then, okay, when they calculate the period of rotation of Mercury around the Sun, there was an error of 10 or 11 minutes as per Newton's law. So there was something either wrong or inaccurate in Newton's law, until Einstein came and told, yes, Newton is right within certain limits, but when we go out of these limits, some other corrections and factor must be applied, which is the relativity theory. So this is showing that even the most solid scientific concepts are evolving with the time. It will also happen with Spiritism, of course, but it's apparently evolving much, much slower, because it has been brought by the spirits. They have a vision and an intelligence which is far above our ones. So they brought something that we were capable to understand 150 years ago, and that we are capable to understand today more and more, because a lot of people do not understand it yet today, and did not bring, how to say, things that could then give field for speculations or conjectures. So this was also always a very, very, how to say, safe attitude that Kardec adopted all along the Spiritist teachings. And I must admit, it was one of those that really helped me the first time I got in touch with Spiritism, saying a guy which is reasoning and writing like that really is trustable. The one which is saying science is finished, all what I have written is cast in concrete and nothing can change, immediately gives us a feeling, would have given me the feeling, no, it's coming back to like this dogmatic approach of the religions. So I don't want these things. I prefer things which are giving some more signs of humility. And so that's why this procedure that Kardec followed is absolutely correct and recognized today as in the epistemology.
Charles, can I add something? I was reading something about Gabriel Delan, because this year there's a lot of focus on studying his work. I was watching something online and reading something, and then they were explaining that even though when the Medium's book was published in 1861, I think, or something around that, the years after that, there was still a lot of studies and experiments and development of the ideas around mediumship and how it works and so on. And one of the talks was talking about how Spiritism, especially from that perspective of mediumship, became still a field of study that was pretty solid. I think there was even like a department for some sort of like university course on Spiritism and so on. And there was this just trying testing my memory now, but there was this, I think, yearly or every couple of years anyways, there's this conference for psychology and for science that the Spiritists were part of, and they were invited and they were participating. And Gabriel Delan was one of them that went there, and they presented their theory and their studies and their experiments, and they were pretty much still, even this was like probably like 40 years after the Medium's book was already published, I think, or maybe 30 years. And there was still the same sort of position from psychologists, which was also a relatively new science too. But there was still the same position that just rejecting anything that Spiritism was giving. And and pretty much saying that was still going back to the hallucination justification, and even questioning that if the methods that the Spiritists were using were real scientific or not. And why am I bringing this is that Christina was talking about the fact that we should not try to impose things on one another. Kardec, when he wrote this, he's saying here, look, so far, this is the theory that explains most of the things that we are seeing based on what we know. But psychologists, please go develop something, challenge this, show us what would be the other ways of understanding this. And you see that every 30 or 40 years, maybe it was 30 years, they were still not presenting a solid enough theory, questioning this as a scientific method, and just going back to the same, oh no, this is hallucination. So you see that this element of research and the scientific method behind carries Spiritism through a mediumship, the studies of mediumship from the Spiritist perspective through history, right? Up now, we still have different places where people are doing experiments and testing things and so on and clarifying questions, while we don't see as much on the scientific, like the traditional scientific side. So it's, as far as I know, now we're starting to see a bit more interest from medicine and from psychology and trying to understand this side of life. Yeah, that's all. That's all something that came to my mind when I was researching about the line, and there was like there's still a lot of resistance and not a lot of theories that would contradict or contrapose arguments against what Kardec and the Spiritists brought.
Yes, correct. So what happened are complementary phenomena, new phenomena who came, more materialization, ectoplasm, and so on. But all these new phenomena, Spiritism is encouraging to make researches about them, because up to now, all these new phenomena are somehow confirmed and were already partly predicted by the Spiritist body of knowledge. So they came more as a confirmation of these hypotheses of the action of the soul, of the perispirit, and so on. Okay, so that's basically what happened. And there is, you talk about Gabriel Delanne. There is one case where Gabriel Delanne, he was also always very following very, how to say, with a big fidelity the Kardec's basis. But there is one part where he wrote that he was somehow taking the courage to risk to adjust a little bit something that Kardec had written when he was talking about the medium's writing, psychography. And there Kardec wrote, the spirit is acting directly on the hand of the medium to make him writing. Okay. And then, you know, all the studies about the nervous system, science evolved, and so on. And Gabriel Delanne, making this analysis, he put another hypothesis saying, I think the spirit does not act on the hand of the medium, but it acts on the motor center of the hand, which is in the brain. So you see, it's a minor modification. And probably Gabriel Delanne is right, because at the time of Kardec, all this mechanism of nervous motor centers and so on was not known as it was known a couple of decades later when Delanne wrote his book. So it's one example of showing what has changed. But existence of soul, reincarnation, all these basic fundamentals are absolutely unchanged. Liz?
I there, everyone. I just want to refer back to what Raphael was explaining, you know, about the psychologists and, you know, their reductionist method on, you know, but just banning anything about, you know, to do with the soul. And, you know, as a family in the mental health sector, you know, we've personally had a lot of problems with that because the patients do not get the right help and support that they need. And they just go and, you know, say, oh, this patient is suffering from hallucinations. And as it happens, you know, our particular family, you know, has psychic abilities and they were not hallucinations. And it really, sadly, badly affected my son and also my sister, who, you know, unfortunately found themselves in the mental health sector only because of misdiagnosis, where, you know, the people at the top of the tree, you know, the consultants have no idea. And they assume, you know, that they've got these grandiose ideas and, you know, that the voices are not real, these kind of things. So yes, it's very detrimental, and it affects the evolution of so many people still, unfortunately.
Sure, I mean, you're absolutely right, Liz, and this is why our science and psychology and psychiatry in particular need to progress, but they are progressing because when you listen to the psychiatrists or psychologists which are spiritists from the International Spiritist Medical Association, you can see that there are thousands of studies which have already been published in well-known scientific magazines, demonstrating with all the modern protocols of these studies that the effect which is brought by prayers, which is brought by the beliefs of the person and so on the mental health. And one change that happened already some 15 years ago is they changed something in the, I don't remember the reference book of the psychiatrist worldwide, you know, CIT, something like this.
Oh, yeah, O'Hare, he actually describes all the different, shall we say, mental states of a human being.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
And in this book, it is stated one should not diagnose too quickly as schizophrenia the person who are claiming hearing voices. So you see, something is changing already. They are not yet in the spiritualist paradigm, but they slowly but surely are coming. And one key to really make this change is demonstrating the efficiency. For instance, in the psychiatric hospitals in Brazil, like André Luiz in Belo Horizonte, you know, they have recovery rates for certain diseases, which is much, much higher than average in the rest of the world. And how do they get that? By applying parallel treatments like allopathy from the psychiatrist, and in parallel also spiritual treatments through a spiritual group, which is gathering. And this is now also established in a scientific study. So what's important is to get the result, is to resolve the problem of the persons. And this is why slowly but surely these science, medicine and spirituality courses are entering more and more. They are already present since a long time in Brazil university, and they are entering also in Swiss university, American university. I think also in UK there may be some already. In France, unfortunately, not yet. But I mean, the movement is now launched and it will continue. Nobody will stop that anymore today.
Yeah, and in California, they're also offering paranormal studies at the university too, which is very good. But I do still think in the UK, in the psychiatric, you know, sector, it's still very, very lacking. There are a few good psychiatrists trying to do a lot of work on this. Some ones, you know, who are retired now, but it's still got a long way to go. But Rome wasn't built in a day, I suppose.
Sure, and I'm really surprised to see these last years now that this notion of spirituality and of soul is entering even in some other areas like management and business and so on. You know, a lot of people talk about IQ, intellectual quotient, trying to measure the intelligence of a person. They came to the conclusion that it's not enough. You have very intelligent persons that you can do nothing with them. Then they measure the EQ, the emotional quotient. Is the person able to control the emotions, and is it able to work in a team, to find compromise, to negotiate with a client, and so on? So this has to be on top, even more important than the IQ. And now they come with another one that they are calling the spiritual or spiritualist quotient. And this, what is it? When you ask them, I saw they made a lot of interviews of really top management people, human resources, or even a CEO of some big international companies and so on, that are now promoting the spirituality at the work. So it's totally incredible.
Yeah, because the emotional intelligence, that was mainly Daniel Goleman, wasn't it? And
yes,
the spiritual, I should think, is where you're starting to get akin to wisdom, really, because that is objective reality.
Yes, and what they are saying, these guys, how are you entering in those things whilst you have shareholders in Wall Street or wherever? Do they let you do these things? And the guy simply answered, look, implementing this in our teams, we get better results, better production. So they don't understand how and why, but they just let us do because the results are here. You show. And when you ask them, what do you ask by spiritual intelligence in a team? They say it is love, fraternity, goodwilling for all the team members, caring about the well-being of anyone. So you see, they are very, very close. They don't talk yet about soul. And when you ask them, yes, but spirituality is religion, the guy is answering, no, not at all. You can have spirituality without religion. You should not link both. So you see, the vision is now getting more and more clear. The results are coming. The wave is really starting. And as Kardec wrote in the Spirits book, I hope that in a couple of decades, everybody, even the ones which are today against, the few ones he mentioned here, will say, but of course. But it's always like this. The things are not changing from one day to the other. Rafaela also rose her hand.
Yes, I just would like to compliment that. I think it's not a negative thing that the spirituality cannot be used and felt on our day-to-day lives more frequently. I think it could also be a positive thing, because the earth needs to have a much better vibration, a much better understanding, a much better moral to be able to absorb what good spirituality brings. Because otherwise, if scientific discoveries and business strategies and world actions had clear spiritual touch on it, i.e., for example, a seance to help decide on some sort of strategic work, it could be extremely dangerous. We all know how difficult it is to have a group of mediums in complete harmony and balance. So one wrong idea can not just destroy the current theories on spiritism, but can also destroy lives and destroy families. And it just takes one person using spirituality the wrong way to damage whatever foundations there is on that group. So I don't think it's all negative. I think it's for a good 300-400 years. I don't think that the things will change much for the sake of their own planets, whilst the basis of we already have gets stronger and stronger, whilst the foundation of spiritism gets stronger and stronger and more embedded within our culture.
Yes, you are correct also, Rafaela. And I mean, just to illustrate what you are just saying about the visual manifestations that we are finishing the chapter now, is I know some persons who have this ability to see spirits, and they say, a lot of people say it's a gift, but they do not know all what we are seeing, because they are often seeing things which are not so good to see, you know, which are somehow painful to see. So you are right, the vibration around our walls are still heavy, and the people who are mediums, they know this perfectly. They can see mentors, but they also can see things which are not so kind to see. But nevertheless, the evolution is here. It is going. It is proceeding, and the more the human being is evolving, the more higher rate of mediums we will have in the population. That's also something for sure. But coming back to this spiritual intelligence, when they talk about goodwilling between the team members and so on, you see their fraternity, love, they really come with positive things, which are exactly these values that we need to develop, each one in ourselves, in order to raise the vibration of the world. So that's why I saw this really positively. It is already existing since more than 5 years or maybe 10 years. I discovered it only last year, but I'm really enjoyed. I would really love, I'm now retired, to work in a company cultivating this type of values, because where I was, the manager was always very choleric, you know, imposing, and the other selfishness. No, don't do it because it will, I don't like this guy. It's not in my interest, or stuff like that. You know, I suffered this type of things my whole career, and very happy to see now that the things are changing. And if I would have to work, I maybe would try to change and to try to gather and to join one team which is cultivating these values. And this will happen with everyone. Everyone will then change and change and change, and the thing will really bring, I think, a disruption in this model we have today. Okay, we still have 15 minutes, so I think we can start the next chapter, chapter 7. You still see my screen? Hopefully, yes. So, bicorporeality and transfiguration. Okay. Apparition of spirits of the living, which is the first subsection. You see, we will see spirit doubles with examples of Saint Alfonso of Liguori and Saint Antonio of Padua, Vespasian. We will see also transfiguration at the end of the section, and invisibility. Okay. So bicorporeality, what is it? Basically, apparition of the spirits of the living. So somebody is living, is present here in front of you, but his soul and the perispirit can turn visible somewhere else. Okay, so this is what is called bicorporeality, or apparition of the spirits of the living. Okay. So let's see what Kardec is stating us about this. Bicorporeality and transfigurations are two varieties of visual manifestations. So it's a variety of the previous section, okay? As extraordinary as they might seem at first sight, it will be easy to realize through the explanations that may be given for them that they are not outside the order of natural phenomena. Both are based upon the principle that everything that has been stated concerning the properties of the perispirit after death applies to the perispirit of the living as well. So fundamental, they are not outside of natural phenomenon. So no miracles, no things outside of the natural laws. And the second, the property of the perispirit that we have seen and that we will see all along the medium books, because perispirit is really the key element in the mediumistic phenomenons and faculties. So the perispirits after death is the spiritual bodies that the soul keeps around them once freed from the physical body. We, as incarnated, we still have the physical body. We have also a perispirit, and this perispirit is, of course, of same or similar nature to the perispirit of the death. Okay, and the properties of the perispirit we have seen. It can change according to the thought. It can vary of density. It can assimilate some other fluid to change a little bit its property to get visible and tangible even, as we will see. So these properties of the perispirit of the death are also applying to the perispirit of the living, okay? Kardec continues. Rafaela, you still have the hand risen? Maybe from...
Apologies,
Okay.
it was a mistake.
Okay. So Kardec continues, we know that during sleep, the spirit partially recovers its freedom. Okay. When we sleep, our body is in the bed and our spirit is getting somehow free from our physical body, albeit keeping a link, because when something happens with the body, the spirits come back and you are waking up. It isolates itself from the body, and it is in this state that we often have the opportunity to observe it. But the spirits of both the living and the dead always retains its semi-material envelope, which, for the same causes that have already been referred to, can acquire visibility and tangibility. Okay, so clearly, the visibility and tangibility can happen with the spirits of some dead people who want to appear or even to materialize. And Kardec is saying, during the sleep, for instance, we are our spirit with the spiritual body or perispirit is free from the body, can also become visible or tangible. Okay, as for a disincarnated spirit. Yes, Liz? Your microphone is cut.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that we have a lovely example here in North Cyprus of Sheikh Nazim Naqshbandi of the Sufi place in Lefka here. He departed about 2 years ago when he was about 90, but he was renowned for what we call bilocation, which is bicorporality, as you say.
The same, yes.
Yeah, and he could be, you know, with his pupils, and I have visited and stayed with him when he was alive here. He could be with his pupils, talking to them, and yet still at the same time be doing a lecture in England, in Devizes or somewhere like that. And there was proof because people were in both places. And also there's a lady called Hatice, who's the wife of my solicitor, and she was going to Mecca on the Hajj, and he was in his home, as he is or was all the time with his people, and yet he stood next to her in Mecca at the same time. Okay. So there, you know, there are many examples here, you know, which is lovely.
so this shows two things. First, that this type of phenomenon is still happening nowadays.
Yes.
And second, since these people were Muslims, it happens also in all the cultures and religions. Okay, so this is two things which are going in the way to show it is something in the law of nature, as Kardec wrote in the first paragraph we have read. Okay, but we will see there are other examples coming. This Antoine de Ligorie and so on. That and then of course we can talk about other examples like in Brazil after Kardec. There was Euripides Barzanulfo. There were some extraordinary cases as well, but we will come to it. Okay.
Okay.
Alors, there have been well-proven cases that can leave no doubt on this point. We will cite only a few examples that we know about personally and whose truthfulness we can guarantee. Additionally, everybody can consult their memory and add their own examples. Exactly what you just did, Liz. So it's a phenomenon which is not so common, but not so uncommon as well. Okay. So let's go to the examples that Kardec is giving in the next point. The wife of a friend of ours repeatedly saw entering her bedroom during the night, whether the light was off or on or off, a woman who sold fruit in the neighborhood and whom she recognized by sight, but with whom she had never spoken. This apparition left her very frightened, especially because at the time she knew nothing about Spiritism and because the phenomenon frequently repeated itself. The woman was perfectly alive and was certainly asleep at that time of the night. However, while her physical body was at home, her spirit and fluidic body were in the other woman's house. What was the reason for this? We do not know. In this case, an experienced spiritist would have asked her what she wanted, but the idea never even occurred into our friend's wife. Okay. The apparition always disappeared without the wife knowing how, and always after its disappearance, she would make sure that all the doors had been tightly shut and that no one could have possibly entered her room. Okay, so you can see from the description, the person was not spiritist, so not influenced by this type of ideas. So she saw it very clearly. She was also in the wake state, going to check everyone if everything was closed. She recognized the person, but never spoke to this person who appeared in her home. So we can see here a lot of elements giving consistency to the phenomenon itself. Okay. And the woman was not spiritist, and Kardec is writing, if she was spiritist, she should have asked to the person, hey, welcome, why are you coming here? You know, and then maybe she could engage a dialogue with this the spirit who appeared, and maybe even then later on to go and see the person physically to try to cross-check if in the waking state this person was remembering having been in her house or her room at that moment. So you see, the spiritist has already a kind of a sense of investigation, but not only investigation, also what can I do for you? Also to help, to see if we can be helpful for something. But how to say? In this case, probably it was to convince that woman that there are souls existing and so on. At the point she later on converted to Spiritism, because Kardec told she was not yet at that time Spiritist. Okay. So this precaution, checking the room was closed and so on, proved that she was wide awake and was not fooled by a dream. On another occasion, she saw an unknown man in the same way. However, one day she saw her brother, who was living in California. His appearance was so real at first sight that she thought he had returned and wanted to speak to her, but he disappeared without giving her the opportunity. Later, she received a letter from him that proved he had not died. This woman was what may be called a natural seeing medium, but at that time, as we have already stated, she had never even heard of mediums. Okay, so you see, finishing this case, Kardec giving more elements, even seeing the brother who was in California, so quite far away. By the way, also with a somehow, I think, 10 hours change in time. So probably when she was speaking, he was not yet sleeping. Voilà, so good elements for food for thought and for really investigating and showing also the reality of this phenomenon. She got a letter from him later on. This proves that her brother was living, and this goes in the subject of this chapter, showing apparition of the spirit of a living person. Okay, Sandra.
Oh, sorry, Charles. Just a reminder, it is 11:30.
Yes,
Sorry.
exactly. I was just seeing. So I think we will stop here. So question 116. Let me make here a sign. Hello. Okay. Yes, like this. Okay. So I think we will stop here. So thank you all for your presence, for your attention. I apologize against for Guilherme. He is well. He could join a meeting, a mediumistic meeting in French, which was last Thursday. So he's very well. And feeling even, how to say, local presences of spirits, which are quite positive in that country and quite interesting in seeing what is happening. Maybe some of them were also together with us, but Guilherme is working, so he's in the field of the construction side, so he cannot join at this time. But he will come back, don't worry. And in the meantime, I apologize for, I'm not Guilherme, but I try to do my best. Thanks a lot to everyone. Thanks a lot to the spirits who were here with us, helping us. I wish you good thoughts about all this, what you have seen, and also an excellent Saturday and weekend. And it will be a big pleasure to meet you again next week.